This is the town of Thyatira, or at least what's left of it, bunkered down into the bustling city of Akhisar, Turkey. These are the remains and ruins of this town where the early church grew up. Originally, Thyatira was founded by Alexander the Great as a military garrison. His soldiers worshipped the god Apollo. He was their patron god. He was called the Son of God. By the time the early church grew up in this town in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries, it was a very prosperous town. Well, not like Pergamum or Ephesus or even Smyrna, those world-class cities. It was just kind of your average town. Maybe like the town you grew up in. But its major commodities were what drove the prosperity. Its lead commodity was textiles. In fact, the water here in Thyatira was so rich in minerals that no place else in the world could make a red textile so brilliant and so bold. It was desired worldwide. In fact, interesting, Lydia, who met Paul and accepted Christ in Philippi and entertained Paul, Lydia was a seller of purple from Thyatira. Its bronzesmiths were famous. Its silversmiths made some of the best silver pieces in the world. Its pottery was coveted. And in this town, believers were commended by Jesus Christ. He opens his letter by saying, I know your works, your love, your service, your faithful endurance. And then he adds, and that the works you do today are better than the works you did before. This was a church on an upward trajectory. And that's remarkable, given the pressures that early Christians faced in this town. So here's what early Christians were up against. The entire social, industrial, religious structure of Thyatira was built around the guilds. Now, a guild was like a labor union. Every single craft had its own guild. The textile people had a guild, the bronzesmiths, the silversmiths, they all belonged to their own guild. Now, it just wasn't like a labor union. It was more than that. That was the heart of their social function, their religious function, as well as their work. And Thyatira was a closed shop town. Periodically, the guilds would hold great festivals for all the members of their guild. The problem for Christians was that these festivals were held in the temple to Apollo, who was the patron of the guilds, as he was the patron to the military garrison that was here. Apollo, who was called the Son of God. So these grand guild festivities were held there. They would worship Apollo. They would eat and fellowship and often involve themselves in sexual immorality. So what's a Christian to do? Well, if you said, I'm not going, you risked the success of the guild, because maybe Apollo would be angry with your particular kind of craft or function. So needless to say, the guild only had one option, and that was to expel you. You lost your job. You know, in Pergamum, Christians faced the tremendous pressure of not worshiping in the temples and not worshiping the emperor, and perhaps for that would lose their lives. In Thyatira, they lost their jobs. It hit them where it hurts the most, right in the pocketbook. And every follower of Christ had to make a choice. It would be Jesus or his career.